There are matches in sports that feel like they were written by Hollywood. And then there are matches that remind you brutally, mercilessly, that this is real life. What happened inside that stadium court in Miami on March 23, 2026, was one of the most talked about results in women's tennis this year. A 6-0, 6-2 scoreline that silenced an entire nation. A match so one-sided that even the most seasoned tennis analysts went quiet mid-sentence. And yet, if you think this story is about defeat, you have completely missed the point. The girl who moved to Spain at 13, before we even talk about what happened in that Miami stadium, you need to understand exactly who Alexandra Eala is.
Because this is not a story that started in 2026.
This story started over a decade ago in the packed, humid streets of Quezon City, Philippines, where a young girl named Alexandra Eala picked up a tennis racket and refused to put it down. Born on May 23, 2005, Eala was already turning heads in the juniors circuit by the time most kids her age were worried about math homework. But the moment that truly changed everything came when she packed her bags at 13 years old and moved to Mallorca, Spain, not for vacation, not for a holiday camp, but to begin full-time training at the Rafa Nadal Academy, one of the most demanding and scientifically precise tennis training environments on the planet.
Let that sink in for a second.
13 years old, alone in Spain, training on the same red clay courts that forged the greatest champion the sport has ever seen. The Rafa Nadal Academy doesn't just teach you to swing a racket. It rebuilds you from the ground up your footwork, your mental toughness, your tactical understanding of the game. It rewires how you think during a match, how you breathe when the pressure is crushing, and how you respond when everything is falling apart around you. And Eala didn't just survive that environment, she thrived in it. In 2022, she became the first Filipino ever to win a junior Grand Slam singles title, claiming the US Open Juniors crown in New York. She graduated from the academy in 2023, with none other than Iga Swiatek, a multiple Grand Slam champion, attending the ceremony as a guest of honor. If that doesn't tell you the level at which this young woman was already operating, nothing will. The year that changed everything now, fast forward to 2025. That was the year the entire world stopped sleeping on Alexandra Eala. In the 2025 Miami Open, she went on a run that left the tennis establishment completely stunned. She defeated Jelena Ostapenko, a former French Open champion. Then she took down Madison Keys, the reigning Australian Open champion at the time, 6-4, 6-2. Then she shocked Iga Swiatek, the world number 2, 6-2, 7-5, to reach her first WTA 1000 semifinal. These were not lucky wins. These were systematic, calculated destructions of players who were supposed to be untouchable. And by February of 2026, the rankings reflected exactly what the results had been screaming all along. Alexandra Eala broke into the top 30 of the WTA rankings, reaching a career high of world number 31. She became the highest-ranked Filipino tennis player in history, the first from her nation to ever crack the top 30. History made, documented, undeniable. But here's the thing about history, it doesn't protect you from what's coming next. The woman sent to stop her going into the 2026 Miami Open round of 16, Eala, seeded 31st, was matched up against the 13th seed Karolina Muchova of the Czech Republic. And if you don't know Muchova's story, you need to, because this woman is one of the most quietly terrifying players in women's tennis. Muchova was born in Olomouc in the eastern Czech Republic and moved to Prague at age 23 to sharpen her game at a higher level. She is 29 years old, a full 9 years older than Eala, and carries the kind of lacked, battle-tested composure that only comes from years of competing at the highest levels of the sport. She reached the final of the 2023 Roland Garros, the French Open, losing in 3 sets. She has wins over multiple top 10 players throughout her career. And going into Miami 2026, she had already won the Doha Open title earlier in the year, making her one of the hottest players on tour. What makes Muchova particularly dangerous is her style. She is not a raw power player. She is a tactician, unpredictable, versatile, and extremely comfortable at the net. She uses slice backhands to disrupt rhythm, changes pace in ways that throw baseline players completely off tempo, and has an almost chess-like ability to construct points. For a player like Eala, who thrives on heavy topspin exchanges from the baseline, a style directly inherited. From her Nadal Academy training, Muchova's game presents a unique and complicated puzzle. When the numbers tell a brutal story, what unfolded on that grandstand court in Miami was not a close match. It was not a battle of equals where fortune simply favored one player. The 6-0, 6-2 scoreline was the headline, but the statistics underneath it were even more revealing. Muchova won 80% of her first serve points throughout the match. Eala won just 39% of hers. That is not a gap, that is a chasm. And it didn't stop there. When it came to return points, Muchova was taking 64% of the points off Eala's first serve, a number that tells you Eala couldn't even hold her own service games comfortably. Muchova converted 5 break points out of 5 opportunities, a perfect conversion rate. Every single time she had a chance to break Eala's serve, she took it. No mercy, no hesitation. The first set went 6-0 in roughly half an hour. That is a bagel, the tennis term for a set where the losing player wins 0 games. Against a seeded player at a WTA 1000 event in the round of 16. That scoreline speaks to just how completely Muchova controlled every dimension of that match from the very first point. What went wrong and why, so what actually happened out there. Was Eala having a bad day? Was Muchova simply unbeatable? The answer, if you dig into the tactical picture, is more nuanced than either of those explanations. Muchova's game plan was surgical. Eala is at her most dangerous when she can build rallies from the baseline, loading up heavy topspin on both wings and pulling opponents into extended physical battles. That is the Nadal blueprint: grind, construct, outlast. But Muchova never allowed those rallies to develop. Her serve was too strong for Eala to get comfortable on the return. Her slice disrupted the height and tempo of the ball, forcing Eala to hit from awkward positions. Her net approaches cut the court short and denied Eala the time and space she needed to generate her preferred patterns. Put simply, Muchova took away everything Eala likes to do. When a veteran plays a younger opponent and strips them of their weapons that cleanly, the scoreline tends to look exactly like 6-0, 6-2. Grace in defeat. What happened after the match, however, was quietly impressive in its own right. Eala did not disappear into the locker room or avoid the cameras. She faced the media, answered the questions, and handled the loss with a maturity that, quite frankly, most players twice her age would struggle to display. She acknowledged the level Muchova brought. She kept it real. And then she looked ahead, announcing that her next destination would be Linz, Austria, for her debut on the European clay circuit. Clay season was coming, and anyone who watched her train at the Rafa Nadal Academy for years, the academy built on clay, perfected on clay, obsessed with clay, knows that the surface coming up could be exactly where Eala finds her next level. The bigger conversation nobody's having here is what gets completely lost when the scoreline is 6-0, 6-2. People see the number and stop reading. They forget the context. They forget that this same 20-year-old girl reached the world number 31 ranking just weeks before this match. They forget that in 2025, she defeated 3 Grand Slam champions in back-to-back matches at this very same tournament. They forget that she is competing at the highest level of global professional tennis, ATN Kermad, age when most players are still grinding through qualifying rounds and lower-tier events. A lopsided loss to a proven, experienced top 15 player who came in as the Doha champion and has reached a Grand Slam final that is not a crisis.
That is tennis.
That is what happens when the road gets harder. The conversations in WTA boardrooms and coaching circles about this young Filipina are not stopping because of one round of 16 exit. If anything, she now knows exactly what a Muchova-level performance looks, feels, and sounds like from the other side of the net. And that knowledge is not nothing. That knowledge is exactly what separates players who peak early from players who build careers that last a decade. What comes next, the 2026 clay season, is where Eala's story takes its next chapter. Linz is first, and then the European swing builds toward Roland Garros, the French Open, held on the exact same red clay she spent years mastering under the guidance of the Nadal system. Reports suggest she trained personally with Rafael Nadal himself at the academy in late 2025, a rare session that she described as a dream come true. Karolina Muchova, meanwhile, continued her own Miami run deep into the tournament, defeating Canadian teenager Victoria Mboko in the quarterfinals before advancing to the semis. She is playing some of the best tennis of her career in 2026. Losing to her in the round of 16 is not a stain. It might actually be a badge of honor once the season is fully written. The revolution didn't end, it just got tested. Every great story has a chapter where the protagonist takes a hit, where the momentum slows, where the underdog faces a reality check, where the scoreboard looks impossible to explain. This was that chapter for Alex Eala. But the larger story, the story of a young Filipina tennis player who crossed an ocean at 13 years old, who trained under the most demanding system in the sport, who cracked the top 30, who defeated multiple Grand Slam champions in 1 week, who put Philippine tennis on the global map in a way no one had ever done before. That story is nowhere near finished. The 6-0, 6-2 scoreline will fade. What remains is the foundation of a career that is still, by every realistic measure, just beginning. And the next time Eala and Muchova meet across a net, and there is every reason to believe they will, the result may tell a very different story.